I'd like to call to order the August 24th meeting of the Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority. Time is 6:02. Roll call, Vice President Baker.
Here.
Nicole Thompson is absent. Director Anderson.
Here.
Director Flores.
Here.
Director Kirkland.
Here.
And I am present as well. Okay, item 3, citizen communication. No one signed up to speak. It looks like y'all are staff and you're gonna get your chance to talk if you're ready. Item 4A, consider approval of the BCRUA meeting minutes for June 22nd, 2022. Have a motion?
Motion to approve.
So I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 5A, consider an update from general manager regarding the 36, is that inch underwater pipeline in Phase 2 raw water delivery system project. Ms. Bondi.
Thank you, Madam President. We have a couple of updates to give you today. The first one is regarding the underwater pipeline that brings water from Lake Travis into the, up to the water treatment plant. And that's the one that we had a major repair on about 1.5 years ago. And I think it was about a year ago when it was completed, I had reported to you that we still had a small leak. I think I described it as a half of a garden hose type level, but now, because of that, we have been inspecting it every few weeks, and in our recent inspection, we found out that there was that leak had increased, and now it's more like about 3% of the capacity. So we want to move forward with a repair on that, and so I've asked Aaron Archer, our engineer from Walker Partners, to come talk to you about it and describe what happened and what we're proposing to do.
Good evening. So as many of you guys remember, back in December of 2020, that raw water line failed on the lake bed of Lake Travis, and we went through an emergency repair to bring it back into operation, and we were able to get it back online in about May of 2021 and resume operation to the plant. When they did complete that repair, it was noted that there was a residual leak on the line, a small leak. And so we did a couple things coming out of that repair. One is we did set up to have routine inspections of the pipeline. We started weekly and then we transitioned to monthly because everything was relatively static, nothing was changing. The other thing we did is we went ahead and ordered some additional repair materials that had long lead times so we could get those delivered and get them stored at BCRUA's facility in the event that we needed to address anything that would occur at this particular repair, or if anything else happened on that raw water pipeline until we got Phase 2 online. And so during a routine inspection 2 weeks ago, they did determine that that leak had grown in magnitude. And we, at that point, did spend a little bit of time. We had a more in-depth reconnaissance of that pipeline last Friday with two purposes. One, trying to understand the cause of that leak worsening, and two, working to get together a work plan to address it. The review to determine why it occurred was inconclusive at this point. We can speculate on some potential causes. One of those potentially being a power failure that occurred to the pump station a couple of days preceding that inspection. When you lose power to your pumps, you end up getting pressure surges or water hammer in the pipeline. It's possible that that could have caused some movement that worsened the leak. But at this point, I don't think that with the underwater reconnaissance we're doing that we're going to be able to definitively conclude why that occurred. However, we have been able to develop a work plan to address it. And in developing that work plan, we have been coordinating with the Phase 2 contractor, which is a Thale SAK joint venture, to respond to the leak. And the reason that we're talking to them is that they've already got a large national sophisticated marine subcontractor on their team who will be used to build the lake work for the Phase 2 system. So they are able to bring the right resources and qualified personnel to respond to this quickly. In developing that work plan, we have started to put together a framework for the schedule. And at this point, it looks like mobilization out on the lake could occur as early September, and they'll be doing some work to get set up and to get positioned to complete the repair. Now, as they get to the point where they really need to get down there and start their heavy work, they're going to have to depressurize that line, which means they're going to have to take it out of service. And when they take that line out of service, it's going to take the plant out of service as well. So towards the end of September, there's going to be a period of time that the water treatment plant is going to be offline. Right now, based on the work plan, we're estimating that time frame to be a period of about 1 to 2 weeks. The marine contractor is going to be working 24/7 around the clock on that repair to expedite the repair and bring it back online and get it back in service. And like I had mentioned earlier, we do have all the materials that we need to complete that repair already at the water plant. So we're not sitting around waiting for long lead time items to be delivered to the site. We're still kind of hammering out some of the details on the agreement with that contractor. At this point, we're estimating a not to exceed of about $1.6 million with a cost plus reimbursement, which is essentially the same way that we handled the initial repair of that failure that occurred in December of 2020. Now, I've got some more to say about that pipeline, but I want to pause there for a minute to see if there's any questions on the findings and the repair approach.
Any questions, Matt?
Hey, Aaron, can you tell us the leak, was it part of the new repair or was it adjacent to the new repair on the old line? I'm just kind of would like to understand, where that's occurring.
Good question. Yeah, this is the same location as the original failure, and it's the same joint that was originally leaking at a few gallons per minute.
And just remind me, when we did the repair, did we replace the whole joint, half the joint? Did we leave half the old joint and pair it up with a new joint, half? Just kind of remind me why.
We ended up in that repair replacing somewhere around 25 feet of pipe. So there was several fittings and pieces of pipe that were brought to the lake bed to complete that repair.
So the leak that we noted after the repair was at a joint that had been replaced?
Yes.
So as you're looking at this, are you also looking at recourse against the initial installation? Is there anything against the people that installed it, insurance-wise, warranty-wise?
I'll address that. So we had filed a notice of claim based on your direction for both the original engineer and the contractor, and we plan to brief you in more detail at the next board meeting.
If it's all right, I'd like to follow up on that. So that would be on the original leak, correct? And I'd be curious on the repair, why there was a resulting leak from the repair as well, and we can have that discussion.
Okay,
too,
we
about
can
it.
add that.
So is this essentially a gasket issue at the joint?
Yeah, it appears that way. I'm sure at this point that gasket is eroded. Okay, I'll keep going on the underwater pipeline for a minute. So, as you guys know, we are working currently on a design to replace a portion of that pipeline. When we had evaluated this initial break that occurred in December 2020, we determined that there's roughly 1,500 feet of that pipeline, or half of the pipeline, that has a design that appears may not have the integrity that we need to get us all the way till 2027 when Phase 2 comes online. So we've been working on a project now to replace it. And we had a basis of design and a design approach to replace it that assumed the use of HDPE pipe. It's a plastic pipe. It's a great pipe for marine work. It's much easier to work with than ductile iron pipe, which is what's down there today. As we've been working on that design, advancing it to about the 60% level, and concurrently doing some work to look at surge modeling or water hammer. We determined that HDPE line is not going to work for this application. There are some transient events that would be more than that HDPE line can accommodate. So we're going to need to move that basis of design back to the use of ductile iron pipe. There's nothing inherently wrong with ductile iron pipe, and why ductile iron pipe failed on the first time. That had more to do with the design of joints and support on the pipeline. So we'll move that design to ductile iron pipe, and I know that that's a later agenda item. You'll see it supplemental number 1 to go back and do some additional transient work and redesign to move it to a ductile iron pipe. The schedule for that project would have that construction occurring on that pipeline replacement winter of next year.
So we do have 3 board items later on the agenda. One is for the supplemental contract that Aaron just addressed for our changing design strategies on that pipeline, parallel pipeline. Also, the contract, a construction contract for this Thale SAK joint venture that will be repairing the current leak. And then we'll also talk about the ARPA grant that we are receiving for the pipeline replacement project. Pardon me. So we'll, but I'd like Aaron also to give us an update on our Phase 2 raw water delivery project while he's up here.
Absolutely. So Phase 2 project is underway. The contractor's been out at the site. We've gone through a large number of required pre-construction conferences with various third parties and our own internal team to get those guys underway. Currently, they are out on the site. They are working in earnest. They're working on doing some site prep, and eventually they'll prepare a pad so that they can start excavating that large shaft, the 30-foot diameter, 300-foot deep main shaft at that site, with that work likely to start in the October timeframe. So the work on Phase 2 is gearing up very quickly at this point.
Hey, Aaron, just going back to the previous item, just define for me water hammering and water surge.
Sure. A water hammer event is when you've got a pressure wave that moves in the system, and various things can trigger a pressure wave, starting a pump, stopping a pump, relatively small pressure waves. If you lose power, that's typically kind of a worst case scenario. All your pumps stop and create this pressure wave that moves through the system. We design systems to accommodate that. It's part of every design, and so we anticipate it and put in mitigation measures to deal with it. But even with mitigation measures in place, there still is a smaller scale pressure wave that will move through systems.
Thank you.
So Aaron, was there any consideration in the analysis to if a surge anticipator would allow you to stay with HDPE?
We looked at a number of different alternatives, and a surge anticipator wouldn't be sufficient. The only thing that would have kept an HDPE pipeline is a potential solution would have been a large surge tank on the barge, which really is not feasible.
Yeah. Thank you.
If there are any questions, we can move on to the next item. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
5B, consider an update from General Manager regarding BCRUA water demand
Yes, on
supply status.
On this item, well, as everybody's seen, thank goodness it started raining, so the peak demands that we have seen in the past summer have come down significantly, so I'm not going to give an extended update, but just tell you that most of the flows that we've seen in the last month have been very similar to what I reported last month. Leander's peak hour capacity was, last month I reported it was 97% of their capacity, and this month the peak was 98%. Cedar Park is pretty steady at about 4 MGD and about 72% of their peak hour capacity, and Round Rock was 58% of their peak hour capacity this month, down from 65% last month. And actually, I think I had that backwards, sorry. In August, it was 58%, and it was up to 65%, which makes sense with the summer we've been having. They've been averaging about 3 MGD, which is pretty much what they have been these past couple months. And Leander was holding steady, averaging about 10 MGD. And their maximum this past month was about 12 of their 15 total. So I wasn't, because as we go into the winter, I'm probably not going to continue to do these water demand updates, but we can start again next summer if it seems like a good idea.
Karen, if I could, is September usually a flat line to August, less, more, just historically for, it doesn't matter on the city, I'm just curious as far as overall demand on the facility, is it usually a little bit less starting in September?
Usually a little bit less because the rains will start coming. August typically isn't a big rain month, which we've actually had that in spades, but September should be attenuating.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item 6A, consider a resolution approving the BCRUA quarterly investment report for April 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022. And we have Kevin Klosterber, Assistant Director of Finance, Cedar Park.
Good evening, Madam President and board members. Kevin Klosterboer from the Finance Department for Cedar Park. It's good to be with you this evening. This evening I have for your consideration a quarterly investment report for the period of April 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2022. In your packet, you should have the quarterly investment report from Meter, who serves as BCRUA's investment advisor. I'm going to talk through a few points on page 5, which is a portfolio summary management report. BCRUA has an ending portfolio balance for the quarter of $129 million. Our investment income for the quarter was $193,897. Total investment earnings for the fiscal year through the third quarter are $309,000. The average yield to maturity for our portfolio for this quarter was 0.646%, which is definitely a step in the right direction. This does lag behind the benchmark, which for us is the 1-year U.S. Treasury note, for which a return on June 30th was 2.8%. The fast-rising interest rate environment we've seen over the last several months has left us in a position where our average yields have fallen behind that benchmark, just because we're locked in at certain investments over time. We do anticipate that our average yield will continue to grow as we continue to work with our investment advisor to maximize the yield where possible while maintaining security and limiting risk in line with our conservative investment policy. The weighted average maturity, or WAM, for the quarter was 133 days, well within our policy limit of 365 days. Those are the points I was going to walk you through on the portfolio summary management report. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have about the investment report.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Can I get a motion? Approved.
Motion to approve?
And I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 6B, consider a resolution approving a finance agreement between the Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority Incorporated and the Texas Water Development Board and other matters in connection therewith relating to the sale of 40 million, is that right? I don't read numbers very often.
That's right.
Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority Incorporated, City of Leander, Texas Contract Revenue Bonds, which is the Brushy Creek Regional Water Treatment and Distribution Project Series 2022.
Thank you, Madam President. So you all have seen these over the past few years as we have borrowed funds, this one particularly for the Phase 2 deep water intake. The Texas Water Development Board had approved BCRUA's loan for the Phase 2 project in July of 2021. And last year at the same time, the board approved financing agreements for both Leander and Cedar Park, because Leander and Cedar Park were both taking loans for this, and Round Rock was using cash. So this loan is really only involves Leander, because Leander is obtaining their funds over a 3-year period. So last year, we had a $40 million basically first takedown of funds for the 2021 SWIFT. This year, we're doing 40 million in 2022, and then there'll be one more tranche next year for $39,090,000, which will be the total of Leander's loans of 119 million. So this bond issue is for the Series 2022 bonds. Leander City Council already approved this financing agreement last Thursday, and so you'll consider it tonight. And then the actual bond resolution for this loan will be brought to you for consideration in October. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I move that we approve.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Gave up my agenda. All right. Item 6C, consider a resolution authorizing the president to execute a supplemental contract number 1 for engineering services with Walker Partners for the 36-inch underwater replacement pipeline.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the item that Aaron Archer spoke about earlier in our update on the 36-inch water line. In January this year, the board authorized an engineering service agreement with Walker Partners to design a replacement pipeline for about 1,500 feet of the 36-inch diameter underwater pipeline that had failed the year before. So the design had initially included this high-density polyethylene pipeline material, and then the pressure studies determined that we really needed to move to a ductile iron pipeline. So there's some redesign associated with that. There's some additional pressure relief infrastructure that's going to be needed, including the addition of an air venting valve. And because we're going to need that valve, there's some additional real estate that's associated with that. So these services include additional design, land acquisition, and the several transient pressure studies. So the compensation for this contract is $81,966. And Aaron and I are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Now, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Call item 6D, consider a resolution authorizing the president to execute a subrecipient agreement between Williamson County and Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority Incorporated for the underwater pipeline replacement project.
Thank you, Madam President. This is really good news for us. This is a grant from Williamson County that under the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funds. And on May 24th, Williamson County approved an allocation of $5 million to BCRUA for the construction of the underwater pipeline replacement project, which is the one we just talked about, this parallel 36-inch water pipeline. So the county provided BCRUA a subrecipient agreement. It's the same one that all entities receiving ARPA funds from them must execute. The agreement, which is in your packet, sets forth terms relating to payment, termination, standards for financial management, monitoring, allowable costs, auditing, reporting, and other legal matters. And we recommend the board authorize the execution of the agreement, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
And I'll second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And item 6E, consider a resolution authorizing the president to execute a construction contract with Dale SAK Joint Venture for the repair of the 36-inch underwater pipeline.
Thank you, Madam President. Early in the meeting, we described what this project is for. It's for a repair of our 36-inch underwater pipeline that has a leak that is significant enough that we want to repair it. It's still in service, but we know that because it's such a critical line for BCRUA, we want to have it in excellent working condition. So we are hiring a contractor, that contractor that we had already selected to do our deep water intake project. As explained earlier, we are confident in this contractor because they have very sophisticated personnel, equipment, and expertise in this particular area. So we are recommending a contract with Dale SAK joint venture. But because we haven't really worked out the details of the agreement, and we expect to have that done early next week, but we are recommending that the board authorize the president to, once we have the agreement in hand, to execute the agreement. And we'd be happy to answer any other questions.
So Karen, just, no other comments, but I just want to kind of reemphasize, I guess, I plan on supporting this. We obviously have to fix it, but I do want to understand why we have a second leak in the repaired section. Because and again, things happen. I mean, I understand that. Not everything's perfect, but I want to make sure that's not a repeatable failure, that hopefully we're learning from it. And so I do want to hear back on that when it comes in, so.
Any other questions?
I was curious, I know it was mentioned that perhaps 1 week to 2 weeks would be the duration of the repair, and I guess that's best case scenario, but how does that impact the 3 cities? It'd be interesting to see how a shutdown of the plant will impact the residents.
Well, the good news is because the pipe is in service and still delivering 97% of its capacity, we have some time to plan. So each city right now is preparing for what they would need to be able to provide the service to their residents with this one pipeline out of service, which will result in a 1 to 2 week shutdown of the BCRUA plant. But each of the affected cities do have their own water treatment plant as well, so they're working out their plans for how to address that, and looks like we'll have, a few weeks to get the plans in place.
So with the repair that's going on right now under New Hope in Cedar Park, close to Main Street, is there going to be any issues that our residents need to know about in conjunction with both projects, or are you going to be able to finish one up before you start the other?
Well, that's a good question. The one that's in New Hope Drive, we have probably till early September to complete that. I guess it is possible there could be some overlap, but they're pretty far away from each other, so I wouldn't expect that would have any additional impact on the Cedar Park residents.
I guess on the upside, maybe shut down of the plant for a little while will afford some opportunities to do some things maintenance-wise that are
Yes.
impossible to do otherwise. Who knows? I don't know. You guys have probably already talked about that.
Just thinking of the positive.
Right. Anything else?
Yeah, no, I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, aye as well, and motion passes. Item number 7, director closing comments. And I like this extra part regarding items of community interest. So, Vice President Baker.
Good night.
Director Flores.
Good night.
Director Kirkland.
Have a nice evening.
Director Anderson.
Yeah, thank you and good evening.
And thank you to the staff. I know you guys have probably weren't thrilled with this latest development, but I appreciate all the efforts, and to our residents, more to come. We'll let you know. And that's it. Meeting adjourned.